Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Morley.
And today we're going to talk about what I experienced this past weekend. I feel like we are in a very intense time. I'll just speak for myself. And I feel like a lot of people that I'm speaking through are definitely moving through something. And this morning I was voice noting one of the coaches who's a dear friend of mine. I was like, I just feel like this energy of many of us are at this precipice. So it's like whatever we've been not acknowledging and processing through the year has all come in full on. And we're just at this place where we're like, it's time for you to go into everything that's here right now, because there is no carrying it over till the end of the year and so forth. And so for me, especially, it has been a very challenging last, I would say, probably 2 weeks of experiencing some really intense emotions. And I know that, Danny, you're going through a lot of like physical stuff. And for you too, I know you're moving through a lot of emotional stuff as well. But yeah, I just feel like I was hit with a Titanic of, if you don't process this now, this is where you're going to stay and that's what you're going to choose. And so I've got a whole story, but I'd love for you to, go into a little bit about what you've experienced the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's just like the rest of 2024. It's felt like a lot.
Yeah.
Well, let's get straight into your stuff. Like, that's why we're here today.
Yeah. Okay. So I traveled, and I realized like traveling for me now is much more difficult than it's ever been before. I think just the process of like being around all different kinds of people, and then like, spending time with people. And when I came home, I just got really physically sick, which is something that I don't experience a lot. I don't ever get like colds. Like, I'm still someone who still hasn't gotten COVID. Like, I'm just not someone who gets physically ill a lot. But I came back and I was just hit. I mean, pummeled with just like body aches, and my throat was on fire, and I was just super exhausted and drained. And not only that, as I was feeling physically drained and sick, I felt all of like the emotional stuff that needed processing. And so I spent that entire week just not fully going into everything because I didn't feel good. And I was just kind of avoiding big time. And then on Friday morning, I've been working with dragons and like dragon energy a lot. And I pulled this card from my dragon deck. And basically the question that I had was, what do I need clarity on right now? And what I have been thinking of was that I need to go spend some time alone with just me. And the card that popped out was basically like, go spend time alone. Okay. So Saturday morning, I went into like the secret spot that we have in the mountains with one of my dogs. And in this secret spot is like this beautiful little like waterfall and stream that Danny and I have dipped many times into. And it's surrounded by like dragonflies and trees and all of these beautiful things. And I went there, and I decided to take mushrooms that day. And mushrooms for me, it's a very, very sacred plant medicine. Obviously, I don't do it a lot. When I do it, it's because I feel called to do it. And it's interesting because when I talk about it, I can feel guilt coming up. Like, I shouldn't be taking that. I shouldn't be doing that. And it's like, okay, alchemize the guilt. You're okay. You're not abusing it. And also, you're not needing it to heal you. I think that's the beautiful part about when we bring in modalities, when we do this work, is it's there to be an add-on, but I know what to do when all of this stuff comes up as I'm journeying. And so as soon as I took the mushrooms, and I was really intentional with it, and I just really opened my heart, and I was the wave connection, I went and I dipped into the waters, and I was just sitting in the waters, and all of a sudden my higher self just came right through. And basically I spent the next 4 or 5 hours just with my higher self. And she was beautifully just laying it in me, like really just allowing me to see what I need to see and what I've been avoiding to see. And so to make a very long story short, um, what she led me to was, first of all, the powerlessness program that I've been running rampant. Oh my God, I've been extremely powerless. I've been giving everything to this program, and powerlessness. The programs that are under that are just the avoidance and the resistance and the distractions and just all the different ways that I'm trying not to feel what's been asking to be felt by me. And so the first thing that she was telling me, and she was telling me this over the course of the 5-hour journeying trip that I did with myself, was, how dare you come into this lifetime with everything that you've been preparing for so many lifetimes before, with everything that you have the teacher, you have the mentor, you have the partner, you have the relationships in your life, you have the work. You know what it means to connect to your heart. You know what it means to alchemize. And how dare you let this program of powerlessness come over and take over you? And then how selfish of you to choose that every single day. And when you're meant to be a beacon of light in this world. And the amount of crying that I did as she was speaking to me, because I could feel how much I've been abandoning myself and how much I've been neglecting myself and how much I've been criticizing myself and judging myself and being so hard on myself. And when the program of powerlessness gets activated in me, I mean, and I let it take over, I just spiral into a shit of complete self-abandonment and self-neglect. And it's the way that I show up for my physical body. Like, I'll do this thing I'm when I get activated into powerlessness, where I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Who cares? I'm just gonna give into this, and I'm just gonna destroy myself. And so that shows up in the way that I don't go to the gym, and I don't eat healthy, and I don't make sure that I'm doing everything I can to ensure that I'm good every single day. And so when I was going deeper into that, I realized, like, underneath all of it, I have this deep inner child wound, a program that I don't matter. Then I was journaling about it, and I realized my parents tell this story to me, and when I was older, and they laugh about it, but when I came out of my mom, I had a cone head. And this happens to some babies. Like, if you come, you're coming out of a vaginal hole and your head's going to, get misshaped. And I came out with a cone head. And my mom said that as soon as my dad saw me, right, he was like, "Oh my God, why does she look like this? Like, why is her head like this?" And I was reflecting on that, because, and I remember when they told me the story, I was like laughing. I was like, "Oh my God, it's so funny." It's like, that's not funny. Like, a baby can feel everything. And so when I was journaling and I was feeling into this I don't matter wound, I was like, "Oh, this is where it started." This started of, like, the moment that I was born. It was like I never had a chance to get for me to matter to myself. It was like the moment that I came out, it was like everyone had an opinion of me. And I've always grown up with a lot of people judging me, like body shaming me, and like telling me, something about my looks and my body, and like I wasn't that smart in school and I wasn't that good at a lot of things. And so I always felt like my own self-worth was taken from me very young. And then all that mattered was what other people thought of me. And that was my worth. And what they thought of me wasn't that great. And it wasn't that awesome. And so I learned really young that I don't really matter. And it shows up in the way that I've birthed, like, people pleasing programs, or like the way that I'm in conversations with people. I always ask people about how they are, and I never make it about me, and I never discuss me because they matter more than me. And so underneath this powerlessness program is this wound of, like, I just don't matter and it doesn't matter. And so when I get activated in that, just this complete self-abandonment. And so as I was journeying, my higher self was like, look at the way you treat yourself. And like, as you guys know, if you listen to this podcast religiously, like, I've been called to the animal shelter, and like even the amount of energy that I give to the animal shelter and the dogs. And like, there was this one day last week where I was like sick, but like they were going to put 2 dogs down. And my entire day was spent on trying to rescue these 2 dogs. Like, I got so lost, and I couldn't be present for anything, like any conversation, any work thing, any meeting. I was like completely sucked into this vortex of trying to save these dogs. And my higher self was like, all you do is you give, 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 give. and it's a way that you don't give to yourself. And then you say that, well, I'm doing such good work for them, and it's like, who cares about any of that if you're neglecting yourself? And think about what I'm giving to everybody and everything, including my partner, including my own dogs, including friendships, including everything, you know? I'm giving what I don't have that I'm not giving to myself to everything and everybody else. And that's the reason why I'm so drained and I'm so exhausted and I'm so down in the dumps and I'm, depression's been coming up for me. It's because it's just complete self-neglect. And my higher self just kept saying, like, how dare you do that to yourself? How dare you come into this incarnation and not love yourself unconditionally and not put yourself number one and put yourself first when the world needs you, when the world needs your light. And she gave this like beautiful example to me of like in the past like few days, my Instagram videos have been all about like me just like lost in my suffering and me crying. And she says to me, even when you show up like that and you're running your programs and you're still powerless, look at the ripple effect you have, because I got a lot of engagement on it because a lot of people could relate to what I was moving through. And she was like, now think about when you create content from a place of power, when you're in your power, when you're doing the work to put yourself first, when you're loving yourself unconditionally and physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Think about what you can be and what you will become in terms of being a light in this world. And I've been having a lot of conversations and discussions with people in my life of, we're in a spiritual warfare right now, the dark versus the light. And how dare I, as one of the souls that came here to be a light in this world, to help humanity shift, to assist Mother Earth into the fifth dimension, how dare I choose these programs over my divinity? And so it was basically 4 or 5 hours of that and me just humbly just weeping and then feeling the fire in me and then learning like, Ellie, it's time for you to honor yourself. It is time for you to put yourself first. And now this entire week, like even showing up at the gym or even hiking, every time the program comes in of like, I don't want to do this. It's like, that's okay. And then also, Ellie, like, I love you. And like, this is a way for you to love your body and for you to keep yourself healthy. And so that's what's driving me now is like, how do I put myself first? And like, even with the dog shelter, like I've had a lot of time this week to go many times. And I was like, no, I have to create boundaries and I have to make sure that I'm being responsible over me and my own dogs in this house and what I need to do to show up as a responsible being. And then I'll show up twice this week to the dog shelter and do what I have to do and be present in that. But I don't have to be engulfed in everything and it's always just all of these ways that I can just sabotage myself. And so it's just been a very, very big week of seeing what I needed to see. And I felt like I died and now I'm rebirthed. And even the rebirth, there are challenges, but yeah, I just feel like it was really important for me to experience that through the mushrooms. And for me, when I journey with mushrooms, it's not this like psychedelic experience. It's this very like real, let's have a conversation and let's allow you to see things with clarity. And I did. And as the mushrooms were, kind of dwindling, I remember saying to my higher self, I was like, oh my God, you're going. Like you're leaving. And she says to me, I'm never leaving. I'm always here. You just choose not to connect with me. And I was just like, God damn, okay. All right. I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. And so it's been just this very intentional um, path since then of every single time I don't feel okay, can I go in and can I open and can I love whatever's coming up for me? And just to keep doing that over and over again. And also not getting lost in all of the trying to save all the dogs and everything and just alchemizing what I need to alchemize. And so yeah, I just feel like it's just this constant choice of what will you choose, to drown or to stand up and swim? What will you choose to fall apart or to rise? And what just keeps coming through these days is like, it's time to rise. It's time to rise.
Yeah, because the couple weeks prior to that, it was just all the time. It was like all consuming. It's interesting because in our past, Ellie would get very concerned about me when I would get into this like obsession energy, and she didn't like it, and it would trigger her. And I always wondered. I was like, I wonder when I'm gonna see like where that comes from. And then over the last couple of weeks or month or so, when you've been really diving deep into this volunteer work with
Yeah.
the animal shelter, yeah, I've seen it full force. And, you know, from the outside, it is obviously it is really beautiful, the work that you're doing. And I think that as well, you know, our programs, our wounds can use that to justify our behavior and our actions. We can use something like something that's so virtuous, something that's so like beautiful, like volunteering to save lives at an animal shelter. Like, who wouldn't want to spend the day saving those two animals that you did? The question is what energy are we coming from?
Yep.
That's the big one. Like, what energy are we coming from when we're doing, you know, when we're trying to save these beings? Are we in our power and we're
Yeah.
connected and we're able to bring that power, that connection, that love into the beings that need our help? Or are we in powerlessness? Are we in panic? Are we in survival? And is that the energy that we're creating and spreading?
Yes. And so this week I finally was like, Ellie, sit down and go into this, because, every single time I get a text message that one of the dogs is kennel stressed or one of the dogs can be put down or whatever it is, I go into a frenzy. I just completely lose myself. And so when I got a text this week, and Danny was like, "Oh, you'll get a plethora of opportunities to go into all of this. So, just choose your time." And so finally I sat down and I really went deep into this. And so the first layer is, obviously, we live in a very broken world, right? Where every system's corrupt, everything's broken, and there are so many beings that suffer as a result of it. Okay, that's the first thing. And it's true that these dogs, when I watch them in these kennels for almost 24 hours a day, never being let out, they're suffering. And that affects me deeply. Okay, there's that. There's the fact of that. Then there's the what does it activate within me? And when I look at these animals, I feel so deeply, and it's almost like I am them. And when I go deeper into it, I realized what I feel and what I see in them is what is unprocessed in me. And so since I was a little girl, I've always felt trapped. I've always felt like I was in a metal kennel and I was at the mercy of someone else's hands, and I
Abuse.
was never, huh?
Abuse.
Yeah. And I was always waiting for a savior.
Mhm.
So, when I was going through everything with my mother, I was always waiting for the time to be 7 o'clock, because I knew at 7 o'clock my dad would come home, and dad was always my savior. And then if it wasn't my dad, it was like, well, my aunts or anybody else that would help me and save me to not be in the wrath of my mother. And so I have a serious savior program that I run, where, because I wanted to be saved and people did save me at times, right? I needed saving because I felt so helpless and I felt so powerless and I felt so afraid. And so now I run that with these dogs, because they're helpless and they're powerless and they're afraid and they're confused and they're scared and they don't know what's going on. I want to be their savior, because nobody was my savior. And when my dad was my savior, when he saved me, he would still leave. So it always left me feeling like I didn't have what I constantly needed, which was support and love and safety and feeling like I'm okay. And so I run this program very deeply with the animals. And so that's the first layer, is so I had to process with my inner child and all the inner children that were showing up, of how powerless they feel, how helpless they feel, how much they're still waiting for someone to save her from her own suffering, from her own pain, from the abuse, and connecting her to her divinity as she's processing all of this. And I realized the reason why I run this program with the dogs is because I can't see their divinity, because my inner child's not connected to her divinity and her power. So as I connect to my divinity and as I connect to my power and I start to heal all of this, fear and confusion and loneliness and all this stuff, I can now start to see the divinity in these animals. And so, and having compassion for them too. There's a difference between having compassion and then me trying to do everything to save them. And so, as I see the divinity in them, it allows me to surrender to what is, to know that I'll do my best to promote and help try to get these dogs adopted, but I also surrender to their path, and I also surrender to whatever will be for them, because they are souls on their own journey too, and they have their contracts and they will experience what they're meant to experience. But that doesn't mean that I'm not meant to be a part of it, but from a place of power and not from a place of powerlessness. And so that was the second layer that I went into. And then as I was going deeper into this wound, I was like, why do I get really triggered when so I've been working with dragon energy, and our beautiful mentor Rachel Fiori, was tapping into how I work with dragons when it comes to the animal shelters. And she was saying, what happens to these animals in the animal shelter is that, think about what dogs are, right? If you have ever met a dog, if you've ever had a dog, if you've ever had the honor of ever spending time with a dog, you will know that what they are is just expansive, unconditional love. They are just, they come to really show us what we are, right? And every animal, but dogs are different because we actually domesticate them, right? And we live with them and all these things. And so she was saying, when they go into these shelters, right, a lot of these dogs, they don't progress, they degress. Is that the word? They regress. Sorry, they regress. And what she was seeing was what happens to their energy fields is what was once so expansive becomes like concrete, and it becomes rigid, and it becomes hard. And that's what I feel from these dogs as I watch them week by week by week, like staying in these shelters. And so that really triggers me when I see them changing, when I see them shifting, when I see them from day 1 to like day 50. They're not the same dog that they were when they came in. And I was like, okay, why does this trigger me? And I started going deeper into it. And I realized it triggers me because this is what happened to me. When I was a kid, people would always like make jokes about me because I would always carry a Bible around with me. I was like such a good girl. Like I would roll with these 4 girls. We call ourselves the Spice Girls, and we grew up in the church together. And like basically all the girls were like nuts. They were crazy. And like I was the most innocent out of the 5. And I was just like, you can't say bad words, guys. And like, you can't be mean to each other. And I was just so pure. And I remember when I was a little kid, I would look around at people and I'd be like, how are you guys like this? Like, how are you not like loving each other? And how are you mean? And like, how can you be nasty? And how do you like fit into this world? Like, I would always be so confused about that. And I didn't understand how to be like them because I knew that I wasn't like them. That there was like this purity about me that didn't seem like of this world. And I quickly learned like, okay, what I am is not going to survive this world, right? So then I had to succumb to what this world was. But I realized not only that too, but like also my mother changed me, with all of the things that she and I went through and the abuse and all of the other shit that happened in our relationship. I went from this very pure soul to being this very judgmental, insecure, hateful, like all the things under the sun that you don't want to be. I became my mother in a lot of ways. And I realized when the dogs change and shift, it triggers me because I had to change because of the outer world and because of her and because of, et cetera, et cetera. And so I had to do some healing in that too, of like honoring my soul and what it went through and the programs that it created to become this like very insecure, judgmental, hateful person. Like I still carry those programs for sure. And it's something that I constantly have to go into. So that was the third layer of what this animal shelter experience has brought up for me. And so overall, it's been so many lessons and constantly still continuing to see aspects that I need to go into and need to heal and feel that are really uncomfortable. And so it's been a very eventful past few months of volunteering at the shelter and like really seeing parts of me that really need healing that I could not have gotten if it wasn't for this experience.
Yeah, and after we spoke, after you've had this experience, felt like you got a good kick up the backside, a good kick into gear. And it's easy, I think, to say, and I obviously I checked in with you about this, when you're hearing like, how dare you? And they're like, what was the energy that's coming from? Because when you first started telling me that story, I'm like, is this are you sure? And then it's like, well, sometimes we do need just a good, come on, get
Yeah.
your shit together. Let's go. And sometimes that is the most loving thing to do. And in that moment, clearly that's what your higher self felt like you needed.
Yeah, the "how dare you" when she was speaking to me wasn't like a put me down, it wasn't like a bashing. It was full of such love. It was like, "How dare you choose this when you're this?"
Yeah.
You know? "How dare you show up so selfishly and not put yourself first when you're meant to become this?" It was like and it was so and that's what made me cry because yeah, how dare I do that to myself? How dare I let these wounds and these programs run over me when I'm meant to become so much beauty and power and light in this world along so many other souls. Like the time is now. We're in a battle. And if there's any time that we need to be connected to our light, it's now. And how dare I choose the powerlessness and the weakness and all that other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm someone who I can't like see this spiritual war. I can, I obviously feel it, and I see it in the, in the third dimension, which is what I want to get to. You look at any great epic tale, and it's always about dark versus light. The forces of good versus evil. It's all written in there, and it's all being experienced right now. And if that's you, like you can see this spiritual war when you just look at humanity and look at the way that people are showing up to each other. And one great way to see it is to just look in the comment section on a video. And, something like Ellie, who gets a lot of comments, like you'll see there are some people in there that are, spreading positivity and love and connection and compassion. And then there are those that are in there that are in judgment. And there are all of these forces which are working to keep humanity in that dark place. And whether it's the media, whether it's social media, whether it's, Hollywood, everything in there is skewed to try and make us hate and create more war and more violence and more separation and more judgment. And we get to be the solution and get to be part of whatever it is we choose to create, whether that is positivity and light, or whether that's falling into the being a troll on the internet and tearing other people down and spreading that darkness around the world.
Yeah, it's disheartening to see and witness. I think my way of seeing what's happening in the collective is through TikTok. It's
Yeah.
like the way that I get to see what the world cares about, what we're consuming and what we're being distracted by. And it's still hard to see like you and I talk about this all the time. Like, how can you not feel what's happening in the world right now? Like, how can you not feel not only planetarily, but like energetically? Like, how can you not feel your shit? That's why, like, when some people are like, I'm like, how are you doing? They're like, great, I'm doing great. I'm like, oh, you're avoiding because there is no way that right now you're like just flying high unless you're like whole, enlightened, and healed fully. How can you not feel what is being asked to be felt so that we can actually ascend? And then I see just like, how many people still care about such superficial stuff. And like, even with this election, I'm really starting to feel the energies of like this upcoming election of, these two people running for president. And like, it just feels like we're entering into a lot of chaos is what I feel.
Yeah, for me, it feels like the dials just keep getting turned up more and more. And the more sensitive ones who are maybe already walking this path are feeling that already. And that's all by design, for people like you and I, and maybe probably anyone listening to this podcast right now in 2024, they're already feeling this. They're already feeling it. Like we weren't feeling it 10 years ago when all of this started. Or maybe we were and we just didn't realize. Who knows? But we're feeling it now, and we're just going through the ringer now and feeling all this density, so that we can heal it and we can evolve out of it and we can elevate for the next wave of people that need to be ushered up, because there will be a time where, as the frequency is not going to go down, it's that dial's only getting turned up and up and up. And eventually, you know, you and I will arrive at a place where, as the dial goes up, instead of it bringing up things from our past, we'll be able to just the way that I've understood it is it will just elevate and it will feel good. I think what we're going through right now is I felt this last week. So I felt something shift on Thursday night, and I woke up Friday feeling very different. I was in a very different energetic place. But then by Friday afternoon, a bunch of my stuff had come up, and then that leads me into like a whole nother layer. And so I just feel that every time we make a jump and the dial gets turned up, it's like it's more, we're entering a new space, a new frequency for all that stuff to just come up. And it has to. There's no, and this is one of the things that I constantly get triggered into. There's no escaping this ascension path. It's like I'm already on it. The train's going, so I may as well just surrender to that and keep going, because the only thing I could do would be like not feel it. And of course I'm going to do it. Like, to go back, there's no way I could go back to living completely unconsciously. Like, I just can't do it now. Once you see enough, like once you see the truth, like I personally could never turn the blinders from where I'm at. And so it's like you just gotta flow with it. And I'm having to learn the way of surrender massively, because each little shift that we make, it brings something else up, or I feel it, or my physical body feels it, and then maybe that brings something up. So it's really interesting. It's a very interesting time to be living in, and it's very cool and it's very fascinating.
Very cool.
When you work through the stuff, you know, when you arrive at the other side of whatever it is that gets activated. Sometimes it takes an hour, sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes a day, sometimes a week, you know, depends on what you're working through. But on the other side of it is, I'm always like, wow, like this is so cool. Like, how fascinating to experience all of this, to watch it all unfold and be part of it, to actually be like physically part of this process, and to have each solar flare that goes off to feel, oh, something's just happened. My body's going crazy, and now I'm activated into powerlessness. Great. Gotta go take care of that real quick.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge part of what I'm missing right now on this journey. I'm not allowing myself to reach that place of like, yeah, this is painful, but this is fucking awesome. And it doesn't mean that I don't have drips of that. So like, even when you speak, I'm like, ah, yeah, there it is. Like, that's what I'm missing. It's like, because it's so challenging and painful, I forget to find, joy is not the right word, but I forget to find like the radness of all of this, you know, of what we're experiencing. Like, it is really rad. And I know that like when I'm 70, I'll look back and I'll go, holy shit, what a life and what a time. And, you know, it's like, you know, when you look back on like certain parts of your life, you don't tend to remember how horrible it was. You tend to remember like who you were when you came out of that. You know, I tend to, that's what happens with me a lot. Like, I'll look back into the last few years and be like, oh my God, like I remember it being hard, but like, man, I got through that and that was dope, you know? And I think that that's the aspect that's missing for me a lot as I journey on this path, is to remember what we're doing. And I'll get flashes of that. Like this morning I was at the gym and we got like a Voxer from one of our friends and it just lit me up. And I was like, oh my God, there it is. And like you and I talk about this a lot. Like when we touch that, like that mission or like our sole purpose, and it's just like a feeling that you cannot even begin to explain, and then you just want to go and conquer the entire world, which means you just got to, you know, do the work on yourself. But yeah, it just lights me up. And when I have that, I know like, oh, okay, there it is. Like I know that it's in there underneath these pesky programs and wounds. But yeah,
I just feel like that's a deeper level of finding power, of being able to stay connected to that aspect of your soul.
mm-hmm.
You know, being able to be in that energy or tap into it, maybe at will, or have it flow through more, it's going to happen the more and more we heal, and the more and more we're surrendered to this experience, the flow of life, the more we're able to be in the energetic frequency of surrender, then it allows us to be moving through things with grace and flow. And when we still have a lot of programs this is what I'm learning right now, if we still have a lot of programs of powerlessness, when the earth is awakening, and it just triggers all of that, and then you fall into either the emotions or the spiral or the program of victim consciousness, whatever it is, all of the above. We fall into that, and then there's no joy when you're experiencing life through powerlessness. And a big one for me is hopelessness. Is when I feel that energy of hopelessness, it really disconnects me from feeling any amount of peace, of joy, of excitement, of passion, of awe, of wonder. All of it's cut off. And I felt that hopelessness a lot as a child. I can think back now, I definitely felt it a lot from my dad. And yeah, I can see right now, like after my parents separated, I can see him. There was a lot that he went through of feeling, I can feel like hopeless, and all of the pain of losing his partner that I just absorbed. And I carry that. I noticed it today at the gym. I was listening to the Game of Thrones soundtrack. I like to listen to classical music when I work out now. And I was listening to the Game of Thrones soundtrack, and I was like, oh wow, I can feel the hope that this instills. And while it was activating beauty, at the same time, because it was activating that beauty, I'm like, wow, this is missing so much from my day-to-day life. And as I was sitting with it, I was like, yeah, because I feel so hopeless most of the time. And yeah, I just feel like that's that spark, that passion, that warrior energy that's in us. It comes out the more and more we heal. And it's just a case of, what you were speaking of, for both of us, is just continuing on this path to arrive at a true place of the way of connection, which is, way of oneness number 6, past surrender. So yeah, I feel like now I'm working on a lot of presence. What I'm working on, but we'll save that for another podcast.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so to anyone out there, as you trek on your path, just know, what we're doing is bigger than you can ever imagine. And what your soul came here to do is far greater than you can ever wish for. And so just keep going, just keep connecting, just keep opening, and put yourself first. This is purely just a message for me, but put yourself first. And if you know anyone who can really listen to this episode, please share, please comment, please subscribe, give it 5 stars. It really helps us to keep doing this podcast for free. And if you ever want to work with us at Master of Self University to learn the real work, the soul work, set up a free consultation with us and work with us one-on-one, or join a group class at mastersofselfuniversity.com. And until next time, we'll see you guys then. Bye.
Thank you.